Elise and welcome back to my channel. And we've been joined by my little spooky boy. Say hello. So I'm going to be working on the last project for my Halloween series of 2023, which is the witch dress that I showed in my drawing in my last video, which you can see over here somewhere. I've got the hat done, which if you want to see how that turned out, go ahead and check out my last video, which I will link in a card up above. I don't know which side it's on. And let's just jump right in and get going with this project. So I've turned off my fun light for this because I wanted you to actually be able to see the colors of these fabrics. So we've got a bunch of black and more black. But for real though, like this is like the cutest fabric ever. It is a metallic covered, well, not covered. It is a fabric that I got from Joann's. They've done it the last couple of years. It is black with a cute little, they call it Halloween icon all over the fabric and with some really pretty metallic gold touches to them. So this is going to be the main body of my dress. So it's going to be the bodice as well as the skirt. And I have a ton of this because unfortunately it's very directional. So I'm gonna have to be really careful with how I cut out my skirt panels for this. And then I have a black mercerized cotton voile for my sleeves. I only have a yard of this, so I'm hoping it's enough. It's pretty wide, so I think it'll be okay. And then for my collar, I have a black cotton sateen, which you once again cannot really see because it is already dark. It's 6:15 in mid-October, so our light is basically gone. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with the drafting process for this because I have not actually started drafting this dress. The bodice of this dress is going to be based on this pattern, which is McCall's M8239. It's one I've had for a while and I've been wanting to do it for a while because I think it's just ridiculously cute. However, I did want a flowier skirt than this, so I'm probably going to do a paneled circle skirt or maybe 3/4 circle skirt, just depending on my fabric. So I'm going to be preparing the bodice first so that I can determine what size each panel needs to be because I want them to, like, the seams to match up between the bodice and the skirt. I'm going to be doing a different sleeve on this though, which you can see in my drawing. It's going to actually be a sleeve much more like the bodice of my Ren Fair shimmies that I made. So first things first, I'm going to get the bodice pattern ready. This is not the right size for me, unfortunately, so I do need to size it up first because I bought this a couple of years ago. So I'm gonna get this done and then I will draft my sleeve. So I'm gonna start drafting this and just jump right into all of that. So I will see you in a bit and hopefully have some progress done. Okay, so I spent yesterday morning trying to get this pattern to fit me. And unfortunately it turns out that the size difference between what I am and what the largest size in the pattern is just a little bit more than I can quickly size up myself. You can see on my dress form, it has some fit issues. So this morning I went ahead and I got another copy in my actual size. So I am going to cut that out and I'm going to look at the noted sizes on the actual pattern pieces to see what the finished garment measurements are to determine what size I should do. Based on what I saw from the pattern, I shouldn't need to actually adjust it at all once I have the right base size. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then from there I should be able to really quickly draft the skirt and sleeves without any problems. Okay, so I have my pattern fully drafted out. I had to do the sleeves and the skirt in my living room, so yeah, because they're kind of big. So with the sleeve, I took the sleeve pattern that came with the dress I'm using the bodice for, and I just cut a slit down the center of it, split it open so that the sides were parallel, and then extended that down because I wanted it to be a sleeve kind of like the one from my Ren Fair dress, but I did make it a little slimmer because that one is like literally 30 inches wide, and I thought that was kind of insane. So I made it a little smaller. And then for the skirt, what I did was I drafted a 3/4 circle skirt that would fit the finished waist measurement of the dress. And then what I did was I marked out where each of the pieces with seam allowance would be for the bodice so that the seam lines will match up. So I'm literally just going to take this, fold it along each of the lines that you see here. I'm going to cut one piece that is the full size, fold it down to this second one here, cut one of those, and then I'm going to fold it up to this line and cut two of those, and then fold it to this last line and cut two of those, and that will be each of the panels for my skirt. Could not do a full circle skirt because unfortunately when I drafted that out, the width of the paper was wider than the width of my fabric. That's what you get for using quilting cotton, I guess. So I'm going to start cutting things out, and I only have 5 days to do this, so we'll see how it goes. After giving my fabric a good press, I went ahead and started cutting out my bodice pieces. And then I cut out my skirt panels. First I cut one out at the largest size of the pattern piece. Then I went ahead and folded it down to my next marking and cut out that one. I had to make sure that everything was lined up a really specific way because otherwise my print would have been at weird angles. And then I went ahead and cut my collar pieces out of my black cotton sateen, as well as a piece of fusible interfacing, which I did not show. And then once I had all that done, I cut out my lining. I used a rayon lining this time. It's my first time doing that. I used this because I wanted to be able to wear my skirt with tights without it kind of sticking to it, and I like how it feels, but I will say that the rayon is a big pain to sew. Then I stitched my bodice pieces together according to the pattern. And then once I had my front and back, I stitched those together at the shoulders. Okay, so I have my bodice partway put together. It's seamed together at the shoulders and not at the sides because I'm going to use a full lining on this rather than the facing that is given in the pattern, because I want my sleeve edges encased and I don't want to have to worry about finishing any of those interior seams. So I am going to start working on my sleeves now. They're constructed very similarly to the ones that I did for my Ren Fair chemise, where I have these thin strips of bias binding that are going to be going across them to create the gathers, and they are casings for elastic, which I have black elastic. However, the difference here is that the sleeve head is actually going into like the arm's eye rather than being its own thing and like getting a casing. So I have my sleeves cut out. You can't really see them because they're black, which is kind of the issue with, you know, filming Halloween costumes sometimes. Next steps are get the sleeves ready, fit them into my bodice, and then after that I'm going to put my collar together and then my lining and then sandwich all of that together into one thing. So I made some bias tape out of some plain black cotton. I used the voile last time I did this and it was a horrible experience, so I just used regular quilting cotton this time. Then I marked where my casings should go on my sleeves. Pinned them on. and then stitched them to my sleeve. And then I put some gathering stitches at the sleeve head, which I didn't show, and then realized I had forgotten to press my bodice seam, so I stopped to do that really quick. It's super important if you want those to lie nicely. And then I went ahead and I pinned my collar to my fusible interfacing, and then basted those together so that it wouldn't slip around or anything. And then pressed my interfacing and collar piece. I used a press cloth because there is just a little bit of spandex in this cotton sateen, and I didn't want to like fry it or damage it in any way, so. Then I attached my two collar pieces together by putting the right sides together and stitching just like normal. Then I went ahead and I clipped my corners so that they would be really crisp and not lumpy or anything when I turned it right side out. And then I pinked the edges once again just to remove any extra seam allowance so that my collar was nice and clean. Pinking is actually really important here because it makes it so that when you press the collar, you can't see really strong seam lines through it on the other side. And I went ahead and pressed it. Okay, so time to turn this pile of fabric into a skirt. This is all 6 of my skirt panels. I just need to group them together and then I'm gonna stitch along the side seams. It's gonna be really easy. It's just a bunch of straight seams. I'm gonna sew up everything except for the side that gets the zipper. So before I went ahead and stitched my side seams, I used my brand new serger to serge my raw edges on the skirt. And then I stitched my side seams of my skirt panels. And repeated that about 5 more times. Turns out when you have a 6-panel skirt, you have a lot of seams you have to sew. So I just kept doing that for a while. And then once those were done, I pressed all of those out. Then it was time to attach my collar and lining to my bodice. First, I pinned my collar to the bodice with the right side of the bodice to the wrong side of the collar. Being very careful to line everything up correctly, especially so that the front of the collar was right on the center front of the bodice. Then I pinned my lining to the whole thing, sandwiching the collar between the lining and the bodice. I had put a piece of interfacing on the lining as well as around the neck slit so that it would be nice and solid. And then I sewed all that together. When that was done, I cut open the neck slit. Then I clipped the curves, especially on the back and front of the collar, and flipped everything right side out. Okay, so it is Friday. It's the morning of Friday, which is why it's a little dark in here still. So my next steps are to attach the elastic and remaining bias strips to my sleeves, and then I'm going to be sewing my sleeves with a French seam, hemming them, and then attaching them to my bodice. So I have to get all of that done. My goal is to really only have the hemming left tomorrow, so I have to make sure that the skirt gets attached to the bodice today at some point so that it can hang overnight, and there's definitely some parts of it that are on the bias, so I want to make sure that it does any stretching that it's going to, so that I can hem it in the morning and be done. So I'm going to start working on all of that, and hopefully I can get all of this done in time, because our party is tomorrow. So we'll see. To finish the sleeves, I went ahead and attached the rest of the elastic casings and then inserted the elastic. This went pretty quick just because these were a lot smaller than my Ren Fair sleeves, which took a while. Once the elastic was inserted, I stitched it down. Then I went ahead and pinned my sleeves wrong sides together. And stitched that at 1/4 inch. And then flipped them inside out and stitched that at 3/8 of an inch. That's my weird non-cutting way of doing a French seam. Seems to work pretty well. Then I sewed my bodice side seams together. And then started attaching my sleeves. Okay, so I have my sleeve pinned in. I gathered the head of the sleeve. It's really hard to see. I gathered the head of the sleeve to fit the arms, to fit the armhole at the top. So I just need to stitch along this, and I will have a sleeve all set in. It was really easy. I would say gathered sleeves are easier to fit than regular ones in my opinion, but that's just me. So I'm gonna stitch this, and then I will do the other side, and then I can start attaching the skirt portions. Alright, here is my sleeve that I just set in. You can't really see it that good because it is black, but it looks really good, and it turned out nicely, and nothing got caught where it shouldn't, and all of my seams line up correctly, so I'm going to do the other one now. And then after that, I get to insert a pocket into my skirt. I didn't do that initially because I didn't think I was going to, but I decided I do want at least one pocket. I don't feel like doing one on the same seam as the zipper like I did with my Dior inspired skirt. So I'm just going to do the one pocket, but I'd like to be able to carry my phone around with me. So I'm going to insert that and then start attaching the skirt to the bodice. Okay, time to put in my pocket pieces. I am starting these 4 inches down from the top of the skirt, and as usual, I'm inserting them by first attaching the pocket to the right side of the skirt, and now I am just going to stitch right along here at my 5/8 seam allowance, and then gonna do the same thing with the back piece, and then press these towards the inside of the skirt. And when you flip this, it will disappear. So I'm gonna mimic the same thing with the back, and then after that, you just flip this out, pin both pieces together along the same seam, and you stitch around from here up to here. You skip this. So I'm gonna stitch on my back pocket piece and then go press these and then do my side seams. Time to attach the skirt. Once the skirt was attached, it was time for me to insert my zipper, which is great because that's one of my last big steps that I needed to do. I used an invisible zipper and the invisible zipper foot that I bought specific to my machine, which works so much better than the little plastic guys. And then I hand stitched my lining down at the arm size and the waist. I did insert my skirt lining before this, I just didn't show it. Okay, so the dress is basically done. I've got all of my lining stitched in, I have the hem done. However, I made 2 mistakes. One was not trying it on during the process and just kind of holding it up to myself and going, oh, that looks like it'll fit fine. And my second mistake was trusting that the pattern, like the finished measurements on the pattern pieces, were accurate. They're not. So McCall's has, I don't know if it's just this pattern, because I haven't experienced this on this level. I sized down a size on this, and it is still like a full 2 inches bigger on me than I expected it to be. There's a lot of extra ease, and I'm not used to stuff fitting me that way. Maybe that's all it is. Maybe I'm just too used to stuff like fitting really closely. I'm gonna be using the remaining fabric that I used on the sleeves, and I'm gonna make myself a sash out of it really quick, just to nip in the waist a little bit. At some point I will be taking this dress in and altering it so that it does fit me the way that I want it to. So let me know if you want to see that process, and I guess I'll record it. And if not, then that's fine. It probably won't be for a little bit just because I just finished it and I kind of don't want to look at it for a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and make this sash and then we'll move on to the reveal. So to make the sash, I marked out 3-inch strips of this fabric that I had, cut them, stitched them together to make a really long one, then sandwiched two of those together and stitched along the edges. And I turned this right side out and pressed it. And with that, it was finally time for the reveal. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, and if you'd like to see more of my future work, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I will be taking a short break because I am exhausted, but I will be back at the end of November with a new video. See you next time. Bye.